So time. Ever feel like a pregnant pause, that point where you say time, and you just kind of feel that space? Time is like this dance partner. It's something we're always kind of mingled with. Sometimes we feel like we're in charge of time. Sometimes we feel like time is calling the shots on us. And so for a moment, I want you to think about something in the last week where time has pulled you in, where you felt like time has almost stood still. Maybe it's sitting with a certain album or a novel or a poet, a little turn in the poetry. Maybe it's watching an infant giggle or sitting with an elderly friend gazing into one another's eyes. Maybe it's making love, maybe it's jogging and running or hiking or painting or singing or whatever it is. For a moment, think about how it is that when you get into the moment, you get kind of stretched into and mingled with time. For me, last night, the most recent example of that was we had finished cleaning the house. It took 2 hours to clean the house. And I sat down on the couch and put on the Bryan Adams vinyl and listened to I Wish I Had a Sylvia Plath. You just kind of sit there. You know how that is, where just kind of time slows down. You're just kind of present in that space. Time's an interesting thing because so many of us are creating stuff and we're creating the things that we're excited about, and it kind of pulls us into time. And then we get into this relationship where we kind of get at odds with time. And we feel like we're trying to crank it, it's trying to crank us. My friend Barb is a multimedia artist, and she's actually north of here in Wyoming. And she's picked up her work while her kids were in junior high and high school, and she would talk about working in her studio, and that there would be this ocean of work coming in, and just she could feel the flood of all the inspiration, and then she'd have to walk out of there and shut the door and make dinner, or go pick up kids, or, you know how it is. There's this ocean of all this, and then you kind of shut it off. We're at this weird place where we're at odds, trying to understand: is time against us? Is time on my side? How does this work together? Simone Weil has said that time, and specifically unmixed attention, is the greatest point of generosity. She'd say attention is the rarest, purest form of generosity. When we focus on something and give it our attention, give someone our attention, give the moment our attention. It's hard to do that when you've got so many different things going on. One trick I use sometimes to be able to give the moment my attention is a pomodoro. Anybody heard of that before? So pomodoro is Italian for tomato. That's not what I'm talking about. But it's a way of breaking up and chunking up your work in 20-minute segments. So you can prioritize and go, this looks like 4 20-minute segments, and you put them on your chart, and then you set the timer, and you don't think of anything else. You work on that task. And so your wife calls, your kid calls, your business partner needs such and such, and you either go, I'm going to stop the Pomodoro entirely, or I'm going to wait. And you just put it to the side, and you sit with that for that 20 minutes, and then you take a break, and look up, and say, what does it mean to check back in? We do a lot of different type of things to manage time. All of you kind of learned these tricks if you've actually been able to ship, right, and been able to deliver something that we've created. But we get into this kind of antagonistic relationship with time, I think, because of the way we try to manage it. I like this piece by Kelly Mellings that Jeremy showed us already, because it invokes a whole lot of different images. You think, first of all, of like the Lewis Carroll, the rabbit saying, I'm late for a very important date. No time to say hello, goodbye, I'm late. And how many times, like those of you in the group that know me, know that sometimes I'm that guy. I come into the coffee shop and I'm focused on this, and I'm like, I'm going to this, and my kids will tell you, sometimes I come in and I'm like, yeah, hey, and just, because because you always feel that wrestling with time. It reminds me a little bit too of the wraiths from Lord of the Rings that were just kind of not fully embodied creatures, right? They're kind of carrying a story, but you can't really feel their body connected to it, and they're searching always. And there's something happening here with that. And then there's this sense of the Dolly piece on memory, right? Where those clocks are melting and time is kind of slowing down. John O'Donohue is an Irish mystic poet, and he would say that stress is our word for the Western preoccupation of a perverse relationship with time. That stress is a word for our perverse relationship with time. It's like we kind of use time. So we call that stress, and we kind of feel that tension of this. And so a lot of times when we look at time, we suddenly feel like you just have to do better at it. And so at Creative Mornings all over the world this month, people are talking about time, and a lot of us show up and go, can you help me get more time out of my day, right? You feeling that a little bit? Or it's Christmas time, and how am I going to get ready in time? You can feel it. So everybody's got this pressure of doing it better, doing it better, doing it better. This goes all the way back to Stoicism, this sense that what is our relationship with the things that are universal, that we can't control, either we're in charge of them or they're in charge of us. It's these either ors. Either you're the master of time, or time has mastered you. Either your time is a taskmaster, or you're some kind of a trickster or magician who have figured out a way to put time in a bottle so that you can make what you want out of your life. You feel that tension? I think time is something more than that as well. I think time is the moment when you and what is collide. A little metaphysical, so hang on here. Time is that space where you being in the world is most vulnerably present to the world. I've got a junior high daughter, and we recently found out that she has someone that she has affections towards. And we talked about what that's like, and the weirdest part is she's like, this person doesn't know. He doesn't know, and so there's something that she has that he doesn't know, and that's what creates some of that magnetism and some of that fear, right? And the same thing is happening in the very moment. There is a part of you don't know that's suddenly coming into the world, and there's nothing you can do about it. You're here right now. And the scary part is, what do we do with being here right now? And so we want to control it, or we want to blame it and go, oh, it's in control of us, and we get kind of stuck between those either ors. I recently, we've got a tornado over there in the... I recently helped form a center in Northside called The Hive, a center for contemplation, art, and action. The purpose of that kind of space, we might do better without a mic, huh? Is that pretty loud? I'm getting there. Yeah, why don't we turn it off?
Let's hit the switch on the power strip.
All right, so time, here we go. So, and what we do at the Hive is a variety of different things, spaces to be able to learn contemplation and practice that, as well as mindfulness for business and other ways to help organizations kind of slow down and look at their process and kind of, in a sense, claim back time by creating a little bit of time in our life in a variety of different ways. And there's a number of traditions that are components of this, but you as creatives in the room understand that there's a variety of ways that we try to manage time and try to manage working with one another. And one of the best ways to get at that is through what's called design thinking. And a lot of you do this kind of work where you take something that's in the world and or in your mind and you bring it into the world. The godfather of design sciences is this fella here. Anybody know who that is? Yeah, Bucky Fuller, right? So he's the guy credited for inventing the geodesic dome, has written quite a bit of things about time. Part of what he coined at in the early 1930s and 40s was the notion that time, that the work of the creative is to engage with what you want in the future and create a model or an experience, a user experience, you know that language, right? Where they walk into the future that you desire. So he would say, if you want somebody to get over that river, you don't create a bunch of arguments about it and a bunch of signs and say cross the river. You build a really good bridge. And then folks will walk by and walk over the bridge, and before you know it, your design experience brought them where you wanted them to be. So in a lot of ways, design thinking, the model of how we do our work, plays a role in how we how our work comes into the world and how we negotiate and work with time. So I want to use this model for us to think through today the rest of the sense of time and really apply that to your work as creatives and designers and entrepreneurs and those sort of things. So a lot of you are familiar with like Stanford D School or IDEO or Tim Kelly, a number of folks that will talk about in DAP down the street here, talk about design thinking as a model, right? And there's a number of models. Csikszentmihalyi has written quite a bit about flow and creative process, and there's some similar models there as well. So I want to just roughly kind of overview some language for a model that we'll use for the rest of our talk. The first is that you begin with a place of a dream. Say that with a dream. Dream. All right, and then you move from dreaming to a place of hovering. Say that with me. Hovering. Okay, so you hover and we'll get into language a little bit. Some people are kind of prickly about that language, but it's actually this space where you go, it's this and not everything else. So you've dreamt, and then you get to a place where you go, I want to work on that particular task, and I have these particular materials and this particular amount of time. And then you move from dreaming, hovering, to risking. Say that with me, risk.
Risk.
Okay? So then you move to a place where you leap out on that work and look and see how it's going to become in the world. Sometimes it's called rapid prototyping or a minimum viable product, right? It's something that you just put out there to kind of test, and you begin to take this risk. And the key is risking as early as you can, or fail quickly is how sometimes you term it, right? And so you're familiar with this, you do a lot of this work yourself. So you move from dreaming to hovering to risking, and then there's listening. Say it with me.
Listening.
Okay? So when you're at listening, there's a place where you begin to go, what happened when we took that risk? And you get some feedback. In design work, this is called empathetic design, right? So you begin to think about the user experience. This is where IDEO will have folks that are designing things sitting on chairs and laying down and kind of figuring out how you fit in the room, because they want you to kind of empathize and listen to the thing that's built and experience it together. And then you move to a place of reintegrating. Say that with me.
Reintegrating.
Okay, so you move from dreaming to hovering to risking to listening and then to reintegrating. When you do that, what you're doing is you're taking this data, this feedback that you've gotten, the things you've heard, and you begin to apply them to a larger whole. One of the best examples that I used for this was when I was in Tacoma, Washington at the Chicouli exhibit and his studio, glass blowing, right? And what he would do, he wasn't just himself glass blowing, but he had dozens and dozens of apprentices that were building material. And then when you go into the museum, the material was set up in a way that you could engage it all. It's the curator's work, right? You kind of understand the progress, and there's a little bit of sense or storytelling to how it fits together. The things we make, the things you put into the world, fit inside a larger world. If they don't, then they just sit in dust somewhere else where nobody can touch them. You've got to figure out how they fit in a larger whole. So you move from dreaming to hovering to risking to listening to reintegrating. And then the sixth step that I teach is rest, which is really where you step away. You take the pen and you set it down and go, it's finished enough. A lot of times in our work, we can keep obsessing about what it is we're making, and we don't really know how to let go of it. And the very things we're holding begin to hold us. So being able to walk away from your work just long enough to remember that you're different than your work is really, really helpful. You aren't your work. Like, you uniquely and extraordinarily in great ways make your work, but you aren't your work. So when you think about this, this is sort of like a dance, right? There's a coordinating that's taking place. And there's a number of ways to talk about design thought and the different people that you dance with. You might have a team of 6 at your office, and you have to try to figure out and coordinate this cycle with them. You might have like a demand from a client that has their own product release, and you have to figure out how this coordinates with them. But what I want us to play with for a little bit is how is it that we're actually dancing with time? How is time a dance partner in the work that we do? So if you think about dreaming, how is it that when we dream, you're giving yourself the chance to have that first dance, you're flirting with time. And so you invite time in, or time invites you in, and you suddenly notice, here we are, what are we going to do with the time we've got here? You sit there for a little bit, and time lavishly gives itself to you. You lavishly give yourself to time. You're just present for a moment. I'm not asking, my 5-year-old's always asking, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? Okay? You're not asking that. You're like, what are we doing now? In this space. So you're on a run, you're doing yoga, or there's something that's kind of slowing down. Maybe you wake up a little slowly one morning. Archimedes is accredited with inventing or discovering buoyancy when he was in the tub. How many of you had some great ideas in the tub? It's crazy, isn't it? So dreaming at a certain point is courting with time, giving time space to dream, giving yourself space to dream. It's possibility, it's play, it's this really free space. A couple questions that help me get into that dreaming space are these. You might write them down to play with at some point, or maybe they'll just stick in the back of your mind and haunt you. What has my body been telling me? So what if tonight, in the middle of Christmas, with all the other craziness going on, you went home, and if you have kids, the kids get to bed, you have a partner, your partner turns on Netflix, whatever, and you go and you draw a bath, and you lay down, and just go, the last 24 hours, what has my body been telling me? When did I get that knot in my stomach? Why is my neck hurting? What did it feel like when she said this or he said this? What has my body been telling me? Different things pop up in really extraordinary ways when you give yourself a dreaming space. Another question is this, and it's a like an earworm. It stays with you. What is my lingering question? Well, I don't know if I have a lingering question. You can start with that one. Or which lingering question? Sometimes there's a ton of them. But write them down, and it's really interesting. The more you sit with these questions, sometimes something pops up. So I have this practice. It's kind of on a weekly basis or so. Not even that routine. I'm not quite as disciplined as I'm practicing. But I'll journal sometimes and go, what is my body that keeps coming up? And one that caught me in the last year and has really been defining, and so it's really funny to be asked to do this talk, is this question. Is there enough time for me to become who I want to be in the world? You kind of feel it, right? It's that sense of like, I don't know what to do with this relationship with time, but I think there's not enough of it. And so all of these things I've projected, I don't know what to do with them. And so I just live in this antagonistic pull between what I project myself to be and what it means to dance in this moment with these people in this room for this next minute. What does it mean to be here? So we move from dreaming to hovering, which is a way of being here. Shikshak Muhammad describes this as focus. And you'll know that work, right, where you have to kind of narrow it down and go, we're having this meeting and not that meeting. You ever been there where somebody wants to talk about something else? That's not the meeting we're having right now. And so you focus and you go, is this right here? But hovering is a really interesting word. In some sacred traditions, there is language of the divine that would come and hover over certain individuals, and that's depicted with what? A halo. So imagine every time that you slow down and hover over one particular task, or in one particular situation, that you're with time and you actually put a halo over that moment of time, and you say, I honor this time, this particular moment. It's not me, but it's also not against me. We're in a dance together, and right now I honor the time. Put a halo on it. And then we get to this place where we risk. And risking time is pretty interesting because we think it's like that point of the dance where you're sitting in the back of the room and then you finally go up and go, do you want to dance? You want to get, and the vulnerability is broken open, right? You're You're in that moment. So at a certain point, when you risk time, you're saying yes to the time. You're saying yes to the present. So in improv, right, there's a whole lot of work that's around time, right? And a lot of improv workers will describe it like tennis. So it's less that you come onto the stage with a script. It's more like you're ready at the net for what's coming at you, and you move with it, and you're in that moment. That's the risk, because the risk keeps happening. Every moment is a new risk, and every moment you're saying yes to the moment. So you've got a lot of work you're doing. You've got some deadlines that are still due before Christmas, right? Before your holiday break. And you're thinking, how am I going to get this done in this amount of time? And what does it mean to slow down for the second and to kind of flirt with the future? And go, what if I gave this next hour? And threw it all in on this hour, on this task, this one focused thing I'm hovering over. And I just join and see what's happening in this mix. It's a pretty risky bet. It's a lot easier to think that you want to have a reminder over here of something else, and in the background you want to have something else going on. The other day, I realized I was listening to a book on tape of Thomas Merton, this contemplative, while I was driving. And I had Siri telling me where to turn. So Siri would interrupt her. And then I got a message I need to send somebody, so I'm texting. I'm going, Siri, text. All of a sudden I was like, this is ridiculous, right? I wasn't anywhere. I was everywhere all at once, instead of being in that moment and looking around. So we're so trained to, and we're really rewarded, right? Thumbs up every time we put a little thing, another thing out there. In fact, you want to take a picture of me and tag it right now. So, and then there's this place where we listen to time. The Quakers have a practice called Clearness Committee, where they get together in a group, and the person who's kind of the focus of this of the gathering is saying, I have a decision I'm making about relocating, or a decision about our house, or a certain decision, and I just kind of need the group's wisdom. And so you sit and you share, and the group just asks a question. They don't give advice. They're not really good Quakers when they give advice. They just kind of listen, and they respond back to what they hear. I think the obsession of creatives make us some of the worst listeners. Right? How many times have you been asking a client what they need, and in the back of your mind, you know better than what they need, right? And how many times we put things into the world and go, why does nobody appreciate the thing that we're making? Because we haven't had any conversations with those other folks in the world to find out what it means to appreciate and honor one another's gifts. So our very brilliance, the thing that gets us into this, is the very thing that gets us out of touch with time. And the dance gets to be this huge cluster, and there's no way to kind of understand how it connects. In my work with contemplative work and spiritual direction and other things, sometimes I get the chance to visit with some elderly folks at a nursing home door here. I call them the mystics, and we sit together, and we just slowly, for about an hour, we'll talk about, like, what are you feeling in your body? What do you want to talk about today? Sometimes we'll talk about some ancient texts. We'll use a talking stick, which is kind of a facilitation trick where if everybody likes to talk over each other, which nursing homes are notorious for that, you give them something to hold, and that's their turn to talk and nobody else. So we go around and we do this, and there's not a lot of us one day, and this one woman who is a paraplegic, and I've known her in a couple other contexts, and frankly, I've probably been really busy sometimes, and so she just encounters me as somebody who's present and then busy, and then present and busy, and that sort of stuff. And so she has a talking stick, and at a certain point, she looks at me, and the point is like, do you have a question? What is your question? And she looks at me, and she says, are you ashamed of me? What she put into the relationship, into the room in that moment, what was meant to be that present in that moment, changed everything about our relationship and about that room and about the year after that and the work we've done together. The depth of being able to listen. And she knew for that space we were all going to listen. What does it mean to make space where you can hear the other and where you begin to hear yourself? Then we have to understand how is it that we reintegrate time. So we've got time out here, and everybody's got their own time, and when we leave here in 30 minutes, everybody's got their agenda of what we've got to get to. So it seems like there's a world of all these busy bees warring in different directions and buzzing around in time, but there's no sense of like, kind of how's it flowing together? What is it that we're noticing that's happening together? What does it mean to reintegrate? You know how this works. You've probably got an annoying coworker who's always got the red herring, who's always a little distracted or upset, who either the way they're processing their work is really frustrating, right? Everybody kind of laughing. Either you're the one or you're the other. What's difficult about reintegration work in the design process with a team is that there is a moment where you go, we're the people on the team. Like, you don't go, I really wish she were this other person. I really wish we had, like, at a certain point, you're the people that have to do this. The same is true with time. There's a moment where you go, this is the time I have. This couldn't have been a worse time in my life to do this. I bought a house 2 weeks ago, changed jobs in the last 2 weeks. I have some, I'm launching a nonprofit fundraising for it. My kids have concerts for into the holiday concerts. Everything is going crazy, and I'm supposed to talk about time, like without looking like a complete hypocrite, but I am. Like I don't know what to do with time, right? So there's this place of going like, but this was all I had. So there was this moment, and I was telling Amy this, preparing for this talk, right? So some of this stuff, obviously, I do a lot of, but like, how do I want to talk about the story? How are we going to do this together this morning? And I've been pushing and shoving it around while I was also like cleaning drywall and doing a lot of stuff in the house and all of this. And then finally last night, I just had to kind of let the talk present itself and go, I only have this much time left to do this. Like, it's going to show up tomorrow morning. And some of you are glad I did. Some of you might be like, I don't know what to do. So something presents itself because this is the time you've got. There's no other life we have. There's this time, and there's really no other moment. So at a certain point, you kind of connect that together. And this is what I think happens then in that space with reintegrating time, is you begin to discover there's a part of yourself that you didn't know. And when she or he shows up in the moment, you go, can I reintegrate that? Can I include that in the work that's here? When you do that work, you're so helpful with your clients because you're able to show up and see the same thing happening around. When you do that work, you're so much farther ahead as a creative and an artist because when the materials and the story and what's in the effort begins to present itself, you know what to do with it. And there's not this nervousness. I mean, you still feel the butterflies. I mean, I was over here like, what? You still feel, but the nervousness is like a sign that like you're present, that you're right there. You feel that, so you reintegrate this. And then, and I think one of the bigger ways that this plays out is that it goes back to that stoicism of do better, is that we were taught to use time to get ahead of it. So you use your time as a kid to get enough electives and enough extracurricular to get to college. And you use your time in college to get a good enough grade to get this job. And then you get this job and you use all that enough to get to this next place in life. And then at a certain point, I meet a lot of folks lately in retirement. And these folks used all that time so that they could have this next time, but they don't even know what to do with themselves in the next part of time. And I think it's this. I think we're taught a lot of times to be patient. We talk about it as delayed gratification, right? There's one financial speaker that likes to say, live like nobody today so you can live like nobody tomorrow. Live like nobody else today so you can live like nobody else tomorrow. And the thought there is live on rice and beans now so you can pay down your debt, so that later on you can have porterhouse steaks every night. But what happens when we do that is that the patience leads to a place where we become less and less present. We're always in the future with all of the decisions we're making about the present. And it leads to resentment, because by the time you get to that future, you have earned it. And when other people take your time or waste your time, you become more and more separated and disintegrated. So the challenge is not that patience is bad, but that there's something deeper than patience, and that's presence. What does it mean to say, I have this moment? the dance part, to see time as a dance partner, not time as your master and not you as the master of time. So then you move to a place of rest. A lot of times I'll go into a grocery store or not so much a restaurant, sometimes a restaurant, but especially like a coffee shop or different things, and you ask, how's the day going? And usually the response is, I've got 2 hours left. Right? So the whole orientation is like, I'm almost done with the things that keep me from the day, so that I can answer your question with joy and say the day's going great. You ever notice that? So how many times is it that we don't know what it's like to rest and to create space? So resting is this space, not working for the weekend, but a space in your life where time can stand still. And it can be artist pages, it can be your own kind of artist state, it can be this space of hiking, it can be these moments of meditation in the morning. There's a number of practices that create space. This is really crucial. This is crucial for your team too. If your team's relationship is based all on the energy of output, then your team won't know how to rest with each other. You have to go through that whole cycle, enjoy the reward of output, and then party. Give yourself some space to play. Give yourself a space where time stands still. And then when you've rested, it's amazing what you'll dream of. And you get invited like that. The dance of time. So I guess we've got some time for questions. How much time? How does that work? Okay, cool. All right. Myra, yes.
Okay, how do you deal with corporations in America who don't have the paid paternity leave, who don't have the vacation time, and we're all about production and money, in my opinion? I think there's an element of toxicity. I'm just wondering how you integrate all that. I'm not trying to be negative, but that's just...
It's a great question. Yeah, our reality is that there are bigger forces that are leveraging us to have more time so that they can have more money, right? And what does it mean to be in relationship with those forces? That's that. Yeah. I think it's a good question. I'm not enough of an expert to give you an answer, except for some thoughts. One is that the abundance of your time is about your practice. So if there's a practice, that resting practice, if there's a practice in your life where you feel the abundance of time, you can fill the rest of your time with that same posture. Now you can't answer, like there is a point at which somebody demands more of you than is possible. You know? But more than likely there are shortcuts you can make and different things to get into that middle space, and the real work is how much time am I using psyching myself out about that relationship. There's also interruptive work. There's a lot of installation artists or activists who do this work, which really chunks up time. You know, I'm trying to think of a time example of this. I'm thinking this one is money, but it's similar. A friend of mine that they got $2,000 in $1 bills. It's about 10 years ago, and they threw them out in Wall Street. And so people walking on Wall Street were seeing, like, grabbing these, like, it's interruptive, disruptive work. There are ways, when they aren't your client, to do disruptive work, to get people aware of how we're using time and using people. And so I think that's also important. As creatives, we have a unique voice and capacity to do that, as poets, as artists. But I think what you're in combat with there is a disproportionate relationship with time. So you're not sticking it to the man. You're trying to open up people's awareness of time. You're doing that in each of those cases. Yeah, Mike.
Thank you. First of all, Troy, great talk, and I enjoyed it. It was very interesting hearing your experience of time and kind of integrated into that model. I'm wondering, because a lot of what you talked about with time, I feel like you could also substitute the word space. And I know, given your experience and what you're into, that's not inappropriate. I'm wondering what your conception is of the relationship between the two, differences, similarities between time and space.
So I think that the ingredients of art are time, space, and stuff. And so we're, as artists and creatives, but honestly everybody in the world does this. John O'Donohue, who I quoted earlier, would say everybody's an artist because they're an ex-kid, and they lean into their built environment. We're all ex-kids, we know what it's like to imagine something, but then we actually do build our environment. We decide to paint our house, we decide to set the furniture this way, we decide this wardrobe against another. And so what artists do, and all people then do, is we take time, space, and matter, and we order them towards a certain thing. So you can take space through this same cycle, you can take stuff through this same cycle. But one of the illustrations I love with this is the naturalist installation artist Andy Goldsworthy. And his, there's a documentary of his work called Rivers and Tides. And there's a moment where he is making these kind of cone-shaped pieces out of flagstone on the coast of Nova Scotia. And he's laying these stones out. He's trying to get it to get up to this, you know, as it goes here, it falls. And it keeps falling. And he goes, and he gets there, and he has some apprentices that help him, and he gets there, and the music's dramatic, and you can feel it, and you can watch the river, the ocean tide is coming in, and it can blow it all over, or push it over. So he gets there, and he gets this last place, this fourth time, and he gets there, and he puts the big stone, and it's there, it's good, he steps back, and falls again. And you can just feel like, this is my life, over and over and over. And then he says something that I think speaks to your question, Mike, is he says, my work is building a relationship with the stone. And obviously I don't know it very well yet. So I think there is something about a relationship with time that's really important, but it's just as important as space. What is it that we want to force upon space, and what is it that we learn from space? What does it mean to yield and share space? What does it mean to be in conversation with space? I think is a big thing. So I don't know if that hits your asking.
That was just so excellent. Thank you. Can you tell us about the nonprofit you're starting?
Sure. So the Hive is it's next to Urban Artifact in Northside. It's in the rectory, the first floor of that space. And we'll be teaching a variety of classes. The trick with the Hive is that there's a lot of us that use mindfulness practices. And there's a lot of us that have groups that we do life with, but it's pretty rare that you put those together. So you might have a group of folks that you process life with at the bar, which are terrific, but they aren't asking how does that connect to your practice. And you might have a yoga studio you go to practice, or you might be reading that, like there's some great apps for mindfulness, Buddhify, Headspace, teach you meditation. But if you do this all alone, it's really hard to know how you're integrating this into your life. So the purpose of the Hive is to have those types of classes, but to include an interpersonal small group component so that folks interact with one another. And then we also have like mindfulness for the workplace workshops, so I can come to your job and help your team kind of look through their stuff and teach and train some mindfulness practices. And then we'll also have some larger events with speakers that are kind of at that intersection of creativity and action and contemplation. So Maya Dur is a Buddhist teacher that authored the Tree of Contemplative Practices. She's been one of the speakers. Walter Ruben's a local speaker around Sabbath practice and keeping those kind of open resting spaces and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then some one-on-one coaching too. Anybody else? Yeah.
What advice would you have for someone, because my question is, I get to come to great things like this, but then I have my fiance and he's like wrestling with things, and I don't know, sometimes I feel a little cookie, saying things like, well, just not, so I don't know how to connect, what I'm saying, share what I am experiencing and connect that with problems that he may be having. So, and we're completely two different people, so I'm very, open, and he's very constructive. So, like, trying to get him into what I think is like a good space, so what advice would you have for someone?
I'm going to play with you for a little bit.
Okay.
So remember when we talked about that? Quaker group. The number one rule is don't give advice. So you're asking for advice, which I'm not going to play. But I think there's actually. but in fairness, I think there is an observation And the observation is that that same principle might be playing out with your partner. That there is something where you have a desire for that person, and you're not aware, perhaps not aware of how that desire is trying to manage or understand that relationship or the anxiety that that relationship brings up. So the real, like the contemplative tradition is go deeper. Don't go out, you can go deeper. You really can. So Hafiz would say, don't let the loneliness leave you so quickly, let it cut more. So you actually give yourself more space for something to be cultivated within. And then you can stand in the presence of anybody, loved ones and strangers, and in that anxiety, you can observe the anxiety, but it doesn't, you don't need to use it to control their situation or influence their situation. It changes that dynamic, which is what the whole talk was like, playing with that idea of like, we're not controlling time, time's not controlling us. We're in conversation with one another, we're in a dance. So you're in a dance with this loved one, and follow his lead something, let him follow your lead something, and don't worry about how he's managing that. I lean into advice there. I think we're done on time, unless there's one question. All right. Thanks so much, y'all.